She lied to you about the identity of your biological father. Admit your daughter believed that Mr. Fitzmaurice was her dad to prove that another man is her biological father, that you have to bring your mother to court.
And then all of a sudden, when I was about 12, I got told otherwise. All of a sudden, she looks at me, she says, you know, there's a possibility that another man could be your father.
Was not her father, and I assured her that I believe 100% that Billy is her father.
Another guy could be her father, but I never told her that Billy Jack was her father. His family put in her head that he was her father, and I just kind of went with it. Yes, and at the time, his family took her in. I was young, and they stepped up and asked to take her, and I knew that they could provide a better life for her at that time because I was young and naive and stupid. So I let them take and raise her, and I've done things for her, and I'm here today just to put things at rest. So
in Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, the atmosphere carries the quiet weight of years of confusion, unspoken resentment, and the kind of emotional strain that only unresolved parentage can create. This is not a dramatic scene scripted for effect. It is the slow unraveling of truth inside a legal space where families come to confront the realities they have avoided for far too long. Everyone present seems to understand that this is more than a dispute. It is a collision between memory and biology, between personal narratives and scientific results, between what people believed and what DNA might ultimately declare. The case begins with a daughter standing across from her mother, a visual representation of the internal struggle she has lived with for years. Savannah, the young woman at the center, has carried emotional uncertainty since childhood. In this courtroom, she is not only seeking her biological father, she is searching for the foundation of her identity. The tension between her and her mother, Donna, is immediate. Their appearance in court together is not motivated by hostility, but by necessity. The daughter needs clarity. The mother claims she is ready to finally provide it, yet both of them know the truth should have been shared long before today. Judge Lauren Lake listens with the same measured empathy she is known for. Her courtroom is a place where conversations about family are blended with the procedural structure of law. It is where the relationship between law and justice becomes visible, not as a philosophical debate found in textbooks on jurisprudence, but as a lived experience. The judge often reminds litigants that the courtroom is not a stage, yet the emotional weight carried into the room transforms it into something that feels like a public reckoning. It's the truth changes everything, reality in motion. Savannah's story begins with childhood memories shaped entirely by the belief that Billy Jack Fitzmaurice was her biological father. She grew up in the embrace of his family, lived among them, and built bonds that felt permanent. Suddenly, at 12 years old, her mother told her there was another man, a possibility that shattered her understanding of her own origins. That fragile moment, the unexpected revelation, became the root of her confusion. At an age when most children are navigating adolescence, she was forced into a personal crisis that would follow her into adulthood. Her aunt, Stacy Brooks, stands beside her, fiercely protective and emotionally invested. The aunt had always believed Savannah was her brother Billy's child. For her, this hearing is not just about truth. It is also about defending the identity she believes her niece rightfully owns. Her presence highlights a theme seen often in these cases. When DNA becomes the central question, the entire extended family becomes part of the conflict. This is where legal concepts like adverse inference in evidence, the presumption created when direct evidence is unavailable, subtly mirror real life. Because Billy Jack cannot be tested, the court relies on an avuncular test with Stacy. It is scientific, structured, and procedural, yet deeply emotional for those whose lives hinge on the result. Donna, the mother, admits she was young, unstable, and overwhelmed when Savannah was born. She tells the courtroom that she allowed Billy's family to take on the responsibility of raising her daughter because she believed they could provide a better life. Her admission is not framed as negligence but as regret, a regret shaped by youth, bad choices, and circumstances she was not mature enough to navigate. Still, this explanation, while honest, does not erase the years of silence that followed. The daughter's pain is anchored not only in uncertainty, but in the delayed truth. The courtroom absorbs the emotional contrast, a daughter who feels betrayed by a lie, and a mother who claims her intentions were rooted in what she thought was best. This contrast is familiar in many DNA test cheating stories and disputed paternity cases, where personal decisions become the subject of legal inquiry. Judge Ryalynn Lake's role resembles both a judicial authority and a guide through these emotional complexities. She reminds them that while the court relies on genetics, family relies on transparency, the very transparency that was missing for years. As testimony unfolds, the mother reveals that during the conception window she had been involved with two men, Billy Jack and another unnamed man. Her belief that the other man is the father is rooted in her memories of that period, her perception of physical similarities, and perhaps unresolved emotions. For Savannah, hearing this is another reminder of the instability that surrounded her childhood. Her mother's shifting explanations feel like shifting ground beneath her feet. Savannah's inability to look at her mother reflects a deeper emotional divide. She expresses that she deserved honesty long ago, long before she built attachments to a family she might not have been biologically connected to. This emotional truth aligns with what countless people across various adoption stories, full episodes have expressed. The need to understand one's roots is not simply about biology. It is about identity, belonging, and closure. In this courtroom, the search for truth is part legal inquiry, part emotional recovery. Listeners familiar with the Game-Changing Attorney podcast or the Divorce Course podcast may recognize the recurring themes. The cost of long-buried secrets, the legal consequences of personal decisions, and the emotional aftermath of revelations that disrupt family structures. Similarly, those who follow Celebrate Recovery testimonies would identify the familiar arc of confronting past mistakes in pursuit of healing. The courtroom becomes a space where law intersects with human vulnerability. Judge Lake then invites Jasmine, Savannah's sister, into the courtroom. Her perspective adds complexity. Unlike Savannah, Jasmine has no connection to Billy Jack and believes the other man is her father. Yet she acknowledges that she grew up believing Billy Jack was Savannah's father, just as Savannah did. These intertwined memories reveal how parental decisions ripple outward, shaping multiple children in different ways. The courtroom becomes a shared space where siblings confront conflicting narratives about their origins. This is the essence of what makes these cases so emotionally charged. People come to court expecting answers, yet the answers often unearth more pain before offering clarity. When Savannah and Jasmine stand side by side, the contrast between their beliefs, fears, and experiences highlights the emotional stakes. The mother's tearful apologies cannot immediately rebuild trust. There is too much history, too many years of uncertainty. The testimonies continue, revealing more about Donna's turbulent past, unstable relationships, unstable living conditions, and emotional chaos that ultimately led her to rely on extended family to raise her children. These revelations mirror real-life content found in Truth Changes Everything podcast-style narratives, where personal mistakes intersect with factual discovery. Meanwhile, Judge Lake's courtroom functions with the principles that underpin jurisprudence, the legal philosophy that shapes how truth, fairness, and justice are achieved. Yet the people involved feel the emotional reality, not the theoretical one. For them, the DNA test is not a legal document. It is the defining moment that will either preserve or reconfigure their understanding of family. As the court prepares to reveal the first set of results for Jasmine, the atmosphere shifts. The uncertainty affects all of them. The mother conflicted, the daughters anxious, the aunt hopeful, the spectators silent. These are the moments where the concept of justice becomes personal. It is not about punishment. It is about truth, closure, and rebuilding relationships that have been weakened by doubt. The first result arrives. Jasmine is not biologically related to the aunt. The relief on Donna's face is immediate, but it is relief mixed with fear for the next result, the one that matters most to Savannah. The courtroom braces for the second result. The emotional tension feels similar to high-stakes moments described in child support episodes, evidence law discussions, and stage and divorce case analyses. It is not a divorce, but the emotional rupture within the family feels just as deep. Finally, the test shows that Savannah is biologically related to Stacy, confirming Billy Jack as her father. The reaction is instant: tears, hugs, emotional release. It is not just a DNA result. It is a restoration of identity for a daughter who has waited 8 years for truth. This is where law meets humanity. This is where justice meets healing. The confirmation of Savannah's biological connection to her father's family becomes a turning point within the courtroom. Judge Lauren Lake maintains her calm composure, yet the profound emotional weight of the moment can be felt throughout the room. Savannah cries, her aunt embraces her, and her mother breaks down in a mixture of relief, regret, and gratitude. The courtroom is a place designed for legal order, but today it also holds years of unspoken truth that finally find release. This case is not only about a paternity test. It is an example of how DNA test people regret taking can find themselves transformed by the very answers they sought. Savannah wanted truth, but she also feared the emotional pain that might come with it. The DNA result ends her internal conflict, yet it also exposes the fragility of her relationship with her mother. Judge Lauren Lake often reminds litigants that biology is only one element of family. Honesty and accountability are equally critical. Savannah's identity is affirmed, but her trust in her mother still requires rebuilding. As the courtroom transitions from this emotional revelation, the broader implications of these results intertwine with legal questions often discussed in podcasts on evidence, jurisprudence, and the concept of justice. When DNA replaces memory as the arbiter of truth, the legal system becomes the last resort for families who can no longer navigate uncertainty on their own. This case reflects that reality. For years, Savannah lived in a psychological limbo. Today, the legal process provides her with something more than answers. It provides a foundation for closure. But the courtroom session does not end with Savannah's family. Immediately after, another case begins, and it offers a stark contrast to the prior emotional dynamic. This next dispute shifts from generational confusion to relationship entanglements involving multiple adults. The courtroom becomes a forum for unraveling a different kind of chaos, one defined by overlapping relationships, misunderstandings, and contested timelines. Judge Lauren Lake shifts her focus to the case involving Ms. Parker, Mr. Morton, and Ms. Lemon, a complex triangle marked not by years of secrecy, but by months of overlapping intimacy and conflicting claims. The transition shows the diversity of cases that enter the courtroom, from identity crises born in childhood to recent disputes involving adult relationships, responsibilities, and emotional decisions. In this second major case, the courtroom is not filled with the quiet sorrow of long-held uncertainty. Instead, it is dominated by tension stemming from contested timelines, fractured relationships, and the financial responsibilities tied to parenting. Ms. Parker insists that Mr. Morton is the biological father of her 7-month-old child, Aaron. The two share a past, a child already connects them. Yet Mr. Morton expresses doubts rooted in what he believes to be inconsistent pregnancy timelines. This doubt becomes the heart of their conflict. Ms. Parker's confidence contrasts sharply with Savannah's earlier uncertainty. She insists she knows who the father is and asserts that her relationship with Mr. Morton, even when complicated, gives her clarity. But in the courtroom, clarity is not measured by emotional conviction. It is measured by evidence, timelines, and eventually, DNA. Judge Lake examines their situation not merely as a dispute between two parents, but as an example of how relationships, when intertwined with mistrust and poor communication, become legal battles. The courtroom becomes an intersection of law, personal behavior, and consequences. Themes explored in legal commentary and documentaries similar to the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, the Divorce Course podcast, and discussions about relationship boundaries and responsibility. This case grows even more complex when Ms. Lemon, Mr. Morton's current girlfriend, becomes part of the narrative. Her presence is not peripheral. She is emotionally and practically involved. The three individuals recount a shared romantic arrangement that blurs traditional relationship boundaries. Their testimony reveals a consensual but complicated dynamic that eventually led to accusations, jealousy, and disputes over paternity. Judge Lake listens with professional restraint, ensuring the courtroom remains orderly despite the emotionally charged statements. She does not judge their lifestyle but focuses on the legal responsibility at hand. In family court, personal choices are secondary to the welfare of the child. What matters more than the relationship history is determining who is legally obligated to provide support. The courtroom hears that Ms. Parker engaged in both individual and joint sexual relationships with Mr. Morton and Ms. Lemon. This context becomes relevant to paternity doubt, but it does not inherently diminish the legitimacy of Ms. Parker's claim. As Judge Lake often emphasizes, people's personal lives may be unconventional, but the court evaluates facts, not moral judgments. The question of pregnancy timing becomes central. Mr. Morton insists the conception timeline does not align with his involvement. Ms. Parker counters his claim with medical documentation showing that her due date was adjusted, explaining why the early timeline appeared inconsistent. This moment underscores how misunderstandings can escalate into legal disputes, especially when trust between the parties has eroded. Judge Lake carefully reviews the timeline, acknowledging that due dates can shift based on medical evaluations. She presses for clarity, ensuring both parties understand the factual basis for determining paternity. This is where the courtroom shifts from emotional confrontation to evidence-based reasoning, a process reinforced by judicial principles similar to the Evidence Act, where factual assessment overrides speculation. In addition to the paternity question, Ms. Parker files a claim for child support expenses, totaling $2,047. The financial evidence, receipts for formula, diapers, clothing, and essential care items, becomes part of the legal record. While the prior case was primarily about identity and emotional closure, this case blends biology with financial responsibility. The stakes here are not only emotional but economic. Mr. Morton admits to contributing only $30 toward the child's expenses. He explains his absence from medical appointments and acknowledges his emotional distance due to lingering doubts. Judge Lake takes his honesty into account, but reminds him that personal doubt does not eliminate legal responsibility. The role of the court is to ensure the child is not disadvantaged by the conflict between adults. The presence of witnesses adds additional complexity. When Ms. Dunlap, Mr. Morton's mother, testifies, her account introduces perspective on family involvement and support. Though she acknowledges confusion and emotional strain, she affirms her belief that her son bonded with the child. Her testimony reflects the broader impact of paternity uncertainty. It affects not only the parents but grandparents, siblings, and extended family. These layers of relational impact are often explored in adoption stories, full episodes, and long-form family case studies. Throughout this testimony, Judge Lake maintains focus on order, fairness, and clarity, the core principles of justice in jurisprudence. She often reminds litigants that the courtroom is not a place for humiliation or personal attacks. In this case, that reminder becomes essential as emotions escalate between Ms. Parker and Ms. Lemon. Their conflict reveals deeper interpersonal wounds, feelings of betrayal, misunderstanding, and competition that existed long before the paternity dispute reached the courtroom. Despite the emotional turmoil, the courtroom remains anchored in procedure. The scientific results are treated as the final word on paternity, a modern reflection of how DNA evidence has reshaped family law. The emotional testimonies are meaningful, but they cannot override biological truth. When the DNA results finally confirm that Mr. Morton is the biological father of baby Aaron, the courtroom experiences another decisive shift. The emotional reactions differ greatly depending on perspective. Ms. Parker feels vindicated, her confidence in the child's paternity now supported by scientific evidence. Mr. Morton appears conflicted, relieved to have clarity, yet aware of the responsibilities that clarity imposes. His doubts evaporate in the face of undeniable scientific fact. Judge Lake proceeds to the financial ruling. Because Mr. Morton is confirmed as the biological father, he becomes legally responsible for supporting the child. The court awards Ms. Parker half of her documented expenses, minus the $30 already contributed. It is a legal decision grounded not in emotion, but in practicality and fairness. This moment showcases how the court blends compassion with accountability, a theme often highlighted in both legal education and truth-based relationship podcasts. Once the ruling is issued, Judge Lake offers guidance that transcends legal requirements. She reminds the parties that relationships involving multiple people require maturity, communication, and clear boundaries. The courtroom has seen the consequences of blurred lines and emotional entanglements. The judge emphasizes that their choices moving forward must prioritize the child's stability. Her closing words function almost like the reflective conclusions found in Truth Changes Everything podcast episodes. Not a lecture, but a reminder of the responsibilities that accompany adult choices. The courtroom transitions once more, shifting from the tension of paternity disputes into a marriage on the verge of collapse. Judge Ryalynn Lake, maintaining the same controlled authority she carries in every case, acknowledges that this next situation is not only about determining paternity. It is deeply tied to the survival of a young family. The new case involves Mr. and Mrs. Alston, a couple returning to court after a previous paternity test revealed that their older child, Carson, was not the husband's biological son. That earlier result left emotional scars that were still visible in their expressions and in the distance between them. For the judge, this is familiar territory, the intersection between unresolved betrayal, emotional trauma, and the legal need for clarity. This case reflects a complicated blend of issues commonly surfaced in stage and divorce case analyses, family law podcasts like the Divorce Course podcast, and deep discussions on how fragile the relationship between law and justice becomes when emotions overpower rational communication. The wife, Carly, is desperate to save her marriage. She insists that her husband, Ryalynn, is the father of their newborn, Alston. Yet the husband sits with a guarded expression, a visible reminder of the hurt he still carries from learning Carson was not biologically his. His doubt is not rooted only in suspicion, but in the emotional devastation of discovering last time that everything he believed about his family was wrong. Judge Lake approaches this case with deliberate clarity, understanding that unresolved paternity issues can destroy trust, create trauma, and destabilize households long after the initial conflict. In many legal discussions, emotional wounds are intangible evidence, yet they shape the reality of families more than most documents ever will. As the testimony unfolds, the judge listens to both spouses recount the events that led to their separation. Carly explains that her husband moved out of their home shortly after Alston was born. She argues that his doubt about the baby's paternity is unfair because she claims he was the only man she was involved with at the time of conception. Her tone suggests exhaustion mixed with hope, a hope that the DNA test might restore their family. But the husband's perspective reveals a deeper emotional narrative. For him, doubt was not born the moment Carly announced her pregnancy. It accumulated over time through inconsistencies, arguments, and alarming text messages that Carly sent during moments of anger. Those messages become crucial evidence. When the judge reads them aloud, the courtroom recognizes how damaging they are. They include statements from Carly saying that neither child is his, that she married him for child support protection, and that she was unfaithful with someone he knew. These texts introduce an emotional layer of instability that legal frameworks rarely capture fully but must acknowledge. They are not just words typed in anger. They are bombs dropped during the most fragile moments of a relationship. They undermine intimacy, disrupt security, and create psychological distance that no courtroom ruling can easily repair. This moment in court resonates with the kind of emotional testimonies often shared in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, stories where individuals confront the consequences of hurtful decisions and moments of lost control. Judge Lake makes clear that cruelty delivered in anger cannot be dismissed simply as button pushing. Words, especially in intimate relationships, carry weight. They shape the foundation upon which trust is rebuilt or destroyed. Carly tries to explain that she knew how to trigger her husband and said hurtful things just to make him upset. Her explanation only highlights the emotional dysfunction that has grown between them. The judge pauses, understanding that while adults often say things they do not mean, there is a difference between an angry remark and a calculated emotional attack. When the judge questions the husband, he expresses the emotional exhaustion of reliving betrayal. He explains how he stepped up for Carson even after the DNA test showed Carson was not his biological child. That act of compassion demonstrates his sincere capacity for fatherhood, something the judge acknowledges with respect. Yet he admits that the combination of past betrayal and the harsh statements Carly made during her pregnancy was too much for him to handle. His presence in court is not fueled by anger, but by the desire to finally know the truth. In family law, evidence does not only refer to documents or scientific tests. Emotional history becomes a powerful form of human evidence. The judge recognizes this. The testimonies paint a picture of a marriage overwhelmed by insecurity, unaddressed resentment, and moments of emotional cruelty. This aligns with many real cases where legal intervention becomes necessary to break cycles of destructive communication. Listeners of Truth Changes Everything podcast episodes or True Life Relationship Breakdown analyses often hear similar patterns. Unresolved trauma resurfacing repeatedly until someone forces the truth into the open. The case grows even more complicated when a woman named Ms. Stanfield enters the courtroom. She is a friend of the couple, but her testimony introduces allegations of infidelity, conflicting accounts, and interpersonal motivations. Her involvement turns the situation into a web of mistrust. She claims Carly admitted to cheating and to questioning the baby's paternity, while Carly argues that the woman is trying to break up their marriage for personal reasons. This clash reflects how complicated family disputes can become when outsiders are brought into sensitive matters. It mirrors issues often discussed in family law podcasts, where third-party involvement increases confusion and emotional instability. Judge Lake remains focused. She filters through the layers of interpersonal conflict and brings the case back to the legal question: who is baby Season's biological father? Personal disputes can be addressed through counseling or internal reflection, but the courtroom must resolve the central factual issue first. DNA, once again, becomes the ultimate arbiter. Before reading the results, Judge Lake addresses both spouses, stepping into the role of both judge and mentor. She emphasizes that the patterns in their relationship, the emotional abuse, accusations, and unresolved hurt, are not sustainable. Whether the DNA test confirms paternity or not, they will need serious healing if they hope to rebuild trust. The courtroom quiets as she speaks. Even the litigants seem to recognize that her words go beyond legal reminders. They are life instructions. When the results are read and prove that Mr. Alston is indeed the biological father of newborn Season, the emotional release is immediate. Carly breaks into tears, not only because the truth is established, but because it offers a path to saving her marriage. Her husband expresses cautious acceptance. He is relieved but still hurt by the emotional turmoil that preceded this moment. His love for the baby is evident, but his trust in his wife remains fragile. Judge Lake acknowledges his pain and also congratulates him for being a consistent support to Carson despite everything. She reinforces that choosing to love a child not biologically yours reflects integrity and emotional maturity, characteristics that deserve recognition. This reinforces the core theme that biology forms connections, but character sustains them. The judge also extends empathy toward Carly, who is visibly overwhelmed by relief, but she does not allow this relief to overshadow the need for accountability. Carly must rebuild trust not through tears or apologies alone, but through changed behavior and honest communication. The judge's guidance resembles the reflective lessons found in relationship-focused podcasts and legal commentary platforms. That truth is not the finish line, but the starting point for rebuilding. The courtroom session concludes with Judge Lake encouraging counseling and structured support. She reminds them that family stability requires more than DNA confirmation. It requires emotional responsibility. The legal truth may settle the court's questions, but the emotional truth must be addressed privately and consistently. As the families exit the courtroom, each case demonstrates a different aspect of how evidence, truth, and personal decisions intertwine. Savannah's case shows how childhood memories and biological identity collide. Ms. Parker's case highlights the legal and financial consequences of adult relationships complicated by mistrust. The Alston case reveals how marriages can deteriorate under the weight of unresolved trauma, but can also begin healing once truth is established. Together, these cases show why courtroom spaces become the modern arena where law attempts to meet justice. They reflect the real-world narratives often discussed in jurisprudence theory, evidence-based podcasts, and reflective conversations about family, identity, and accountability. Each story reminds us that DNA may determine biology, but humans must determine how to move forward once the truth is revealed. In every case, Judge Ryalynn acts as the bridge between personal reality and legal structure. She guides families through the painful process of transforming uncertainty into clarity. Whether the litigants seek identity, financial support, closure, or reconciliation, they leave her courtroom with a clearer understanding of the truth and the responsibility that truth demands.